All right, hope you can see the presentation.
Yes, yes, we can.
All right. So, changing behavior using design. So again, this is like you if you've read the book Nudge, or if you're familiar with behavioral design, or how you can get people to kind of act in a certain manner, or generally it is used Nudge and Hooked by Nee Real. They are written in the context of um, uh, uh, like driving people to so in like context of selling products, while Shikake talks about more in the context of nudging behavior, but like for a higher purpose, like for their own good, you can say. um, so I'm not sure if you've seen this, but this is essentially, if you go all over the country, generally I've seen like tourists point this out a lot, that this is not as ubiquitous in other countries. But when I was growing up, like almost and everywhere I've traveled, even now, I've seen like the penguin dustbin with the use me written on it. We'll come back to it like later on in the presentation. So this is kind of an example of shikake. So this is, I had a chance last spring to go to Austin. And this I spent a day at the Austin Public Library. And this is the rooftop seating space, very beautifully designed building, amazing space. Very, like it really gets your creative juices flowing. And you can see that that is the Google building, the new building that they moved to in downtown Austin. And there I came across this book, Shikake. And so what he says essentially that the whole world essentially is filled with shikake. So sometimes they are intentional, sometimes they're not, sometimes they are um, so essentially some behavioral cues. For example, in this case, you always find, right, people don't put files back in order. So this is a simple, you just put a tape across, or you put a marker line across it. And when people put it out of order, it will kind of click. It'll there will be a little itch bit of irritation at seeing that unbroken line, and people will be more compelled to put it together. Another example is these targets, right? In especially male urinals. I've also seen the same for home urinals. There are these stickers which kind of dissolve or disintegrate over time for children. So they're like in the shape of dinosaurs, or like it gives them a target to aim to. So this is an example of driving certain behaviors using small cues or small changes. This is another example he's given in the book. And again, he's laid out a few examples right at the start. So this is like a piano staircase. So these staircases kind of play the different notes as you walk up on them. So it encourages people to not take the escalator and actually go through. This is somewhere in Japan, to take the stairs instead, to drive essentially them to uh, do more exercise throughout the day. Similarly, um, this is essentially when in the traditional Japanese shrines, this is the entrance which is there. So this is like a miniature version of it. And in Japanese culture, these are like, places where it's a bit reverent. So they found that there are places such as crossroads, a lot of people were there and had an issue of littering. So the government authorities, they found that like if they put something like this in those very highly trafficked areas, people were naturally more respectful and would not throw litter there. So you see, like there is a common thread, like more exercise, more litter, cleanliness, orderliness. So these are why this book, right? So it's like if you're familiar with Marie Kondo, wrote a book. The she wrote a book called The Magic of Tidying Up. So it's about decluttering your life, your home, organizing your space in order to be, like less stress, more mindful, more productive, like a And nudge is, of course, about nudging people to take actions, generally in the context of not always, but selling them things. And it talks about how to transform habits. Now, I'll give you a very clear example. In India, we have a big problem with civic sense. I'd say particularly driving and litter. So, using these insights, you can kind of not only transform individual habits, you are not immune to it either. Like you can use it to transform your own habits, but at the same time, you can use it to transform the habits of an aggregate population. And it's not for designers. You can like immediately just after this presentation, you will have, ideas and you'll takeaways from it, which you can start implementing right in your own house or in your own, daily life, your daily routine. You want to, let's say, exercise more. You want to be more orderly. You want to be more productive. You want to, nudge yourself to, put away your things. So like a lot of these things can be like done for you, and you can use these cues or these insights to transform your own and others around you. So again, what this talks about is you have to exert influence or drive behavior, again, just like nudge, but not explicitly tell people that you have to do this or you should do this, because that defeats the purpose. People are not really very necessarily happy about doing these things. They are not necessarily no one. If even if people like, I'll give you my own example, right? Even if you know that you are supposed to eat healthier or work out more or sleep more and not look at screens at night or late at night, it's still hard to transform this because these activities, these products are designed also, and they scratch a certain mental itch or an intellectual itch that you have. So you have to find a way to do it without and encourage better behaviors or discourage bad behavior. It's like Japanese aesthetics meets behavioral economy. Behavioral economics is the study of behavioral design, like the cognitive aspects of it, how to drive behaviors. So this book essentially talks about uh, four things. First, he goes through like examples of shikake, like where you can find that the fundamentals or the aspects of shikake. Then how shikake work. He's essentially a, doctoral research fellow. So he's done his and he's actually ongoing research is into how shikake work, the theoretical foundations or the cognitive foundations of shikake. And then again, at the end is how to create them. Um, let's start with the most interesting part, like the actual examples of shikake. So Matsumura was an AI researcher, but he found like that all these data sets which were coming in were like a bit limiting. And again, observing things in the natural world, there were a lot of aspects of it that he did not, which were not part of those data sets because those data sets pulled from a limited range of interactions of users from whatever devices or which were recorded. I can give you an example. If you just stand still for a moment and take your focus away from what I am saying, or close your eyes if you want, you'll find there will be a lot of different sounds around the house. Like it can be probably in the room, like the air conditioning, the fan, your system. You will hear some secondary sounds, maybe different rooms of your house from the kitchen. You may even hear other sounds outside, traffic, car horns, children playing, or people. You may even hear birds or animals. So this is all out there in the natural world. So again, what he realized was that data and computers are there, but there are things going on in people's space around you, which are which is invisible because our awareness is not. But when I pointed out those things to you, suddenly you are able to hear all these different sounds in the environment. Similarly, if you we have one more joining us. Just give me a second. Hi Dipesh, we've already started, so I'll just continue, and we can like do like round of introductions at the end. So what Matsumura said was that you want to Shikake, we want to help people become more aware of the space that they're already in, more mindful. Again, this ties into that whole Japanese aesthetics that they talk about. Um, and this doesn't necessarily have to be your personal space either. It can be civic space, public spaces, commuter trains, like buses, whatever. For example, there'll be a lot of things in your own room or in your own house. You will kind of will be invisible to you. But when someone comes and points it out to you, and I didn't remember about like that. So it's one of those things. If you take the same route to work every day or to school, you will find that a lot of aspects of it are you kind of your subconscious is aware of it, but you are not necessarily aware of those things going on. For example, directions from to your house might be obvious to you, but you find that when you give it to someone who has to visit, like or a delivery coming in, they find it, they might find it much more confusing or not unintuitive, which and you will have a mental block because you will not realize that what is second nature to me is not necessarily uh, so you're not essentially broken down the directions to your house in terms of process or in terms of steps, which would make sense to someone who is unfamiliar with it. So shikake is you become aware of things that are there in your environment and kind of generate it. For example, this is the probably the thing which triggered his interest in shikakes or which created this, which is like the birth. So this is the infamous tube. You can see it's just like a simple tube at about 3 feet height at Tennoji Zoo in Japan. And it points to, if you look closely at the picture, you see nothing. Like, what is it even pointing to? What he realized was that see, it looks like a telescope. It's tubular. People will naturally, and it's at a height of 3 feet where children's faces, pass by them. With not only children, as he was observing a little bit away, that even adults were peering through it and looking through it. Just naturally, it was inviting that action without telling them. There is no signboard. It is in some remote location. It is not a because in zoos, happens is everyone's attention is focused on the animals because they're the most interesting part of it, right? Most exciting. What you can see is here, these are actually a replica of elephant droppings. So this invites people to look through it and pay more attention or become aware of these elephant droppings that they would not necessarily been aware of. This is an example of a very good shikake. Now, what happens is we have a lot of problems in the world and we're trying to solve problems, especially as designers, or you're trying to solve a problem in your own behavioral problem or challenge in your own environment, your family, your circle, your workplace. So you are go all the way up to larger problems such as civics issues, environmental issues, medical, again, driving. These are all made up of an aggregate of individual behavior. So if you can track these problems and you nudge people to drive certain behaviors where they want to do it, you are not like cheating them, you're not manipulating them. Because what happens is, go back to this previous example. No one, like when you look through it, you don't feel like you're happy of it. Then you realize that awareness comes on the animal droppings which are there, which you might not have noticed. It creates a sense of delight, it creates a sense of happiness. So you want to nudge people to do things where there is a reward in it for them, like an inherent reward by engaging in that action. So, for example, like creating reflexively tidy people. You can see that when you put the files out of order, it will break that line. So naturally, people's tendencies will be like to maintain that content. They'll put it in the right order. And if it's not, they'll correct it themselves. Now, this is a principle, like when you have a series this is, I think, yep, Dragon Ball Z, right? So when you have a manga series, you can see when the children, or like if you put it all the books in order, um, they they will create a picture, and it again, there's an inherent reward in engaging in that behavior. Now the lines here, right? So normally, if you have no lines, people will park their bicycles or whatever. So the lines, they don't necessarily have to park it exactly in them, but it will generally, they will be uncomfortable about with cutting those lines, or with like parking them randomly. So it just nudges those certain behaviors without being like forceful. No one is forcing them. I want to, I can park it horizontally. I can park it, perpendicular to the line. It's like no one is, but it will naturally create that,
Uh,
generate that behavior. Shashwat, sorry, you're
okay, now
not
it's
clear.
better. Was it all
Your
right?
voice is breaking up.
I think some issues with the network. Uh, sorry, sorry to disturb. Please.
Let me drop my video. Sorry, you can, Shashwat, please go on again if you can repeat that.
Saying that for me, a voice was breaking in between when we were talking about these lines, but now it's
Oh,
back on. I think
okay, okay.
some glitch in the connection.
Okay, I'll keep the video off, I think, maybe, probably because of that.
Yeah.
It's your devices. Yep. So, again, now this is an example of, like, see, this is one of the airport walkways. But I recently found out, like not long back, I'm sorry to say, ashamed to say, that when you take an escalator, right? So you're supposed to stand on the left, so that people who are in a rush, who want to climb the escalators, so they can walk past you. But we don't know, right? We stand in the center of an escalator. So having something like this naturally encourages, like it creates that distancing. But also, if someone is standing in the center, naturally having a target or having something which catches their attention, so it automatically, whether you choose to do it or don't do it, is a matter of course. It naturally nudges people towards engaging in that behavior and standing to the side. So now I can also, people who want to pass them by, they can walk along to the right. Again, so we are not necessarily obedient if someone just tells us this is how you should drive or you should throw things in the trash, does not mean we are going to do it. And again, what happens is this is a psychological thing that I am doing something well, but if people around me are not cooperating or they are not necessarily, then it creates this discouragement cycle where, oh, I will throw my trash in the bin, but everyone else is not, then why should I do it? So it creates that, it's a psychological thing. And again, you want to leverage if you want to change people behavior, where there is fun and games, or gamifying means there is an inherent reward. Again, you want to induce them to want to change their behavior, not induce it in them by manipulation or forcefully tell them to do it. Now he gives a few examples of good and bad shikake. So again, so this is not about selling. This is not about selling people products. This is not about dark patterns. So again, you will get one. What happens is with this is it creates a race to the bottom. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So people will do it once, but if you're trying to generate long-term revenue, long-term profits, brand recognition, you want to create a positive reinforcement loop, not a negative one. So in a good shikake, user, even let's say, you play a prank on someone. So if it's a good prank, like there are some pranks which leave people smiling. There are some pranks which are at the expense of the one who is receiving it. So they will have a negative reaction to it. And you can't always be certain, but generally you want to feel rather than. So what happens if you create a bad shikake? The next time, deliberately, the user will not want to engage in that behavior. Now he gives three conditions. So he uses the acronym FAD, FAD, fairness. So it does not disadvantage anyone. It is not at the cost of, so you don't get to uh, uh, um, as a, let's say I'm the one who is responsible for like the civic authorities, for example. So it should not be at the cost of the individual that uh, we are getting our targets met. Similarly, like when you're trying to sell to someone, it should not be selling to them at the cost of the user or making a loss to the user. So, and attractiveness, like you saw that tube example, it invites action. It does not force. The user always has options. So it should either increase the number of options a user has, or it should not just give them complete freedom. Like they are free to choose. And the duality of purpose, that I may have the as a as a creator of the shikake or of the design, as a designer, I may have the role of inducing more exercise to reduce, the medical costs, for example, or something like that, or less litter. While the user does not have to want to meet that same, they don't have to know, they don't have to care about my purposes as long as they engage in that activity. Again, clear example is like, let's say you have an alarm clock. So with an alarm clock, uh, it's jarring, it's annoying. While says sun clock is a recreation, like it's imagine slowly the light fills up and you feel the light. It's like now it's very easy, right? You have smart lights. You can put a timer in. You can even have a timer which tracks the sun in your geographic location, and it like wakes you up gently, more naturally. Are fundamentals of shikake. So I will not go through all the go deep into it, but like just cool. It should increase again choices of behavior. It should not restrict the user. It should skillfully induce that behavior, not force them. It should be, of course, the problem should be solved. It should be trackable. Strong shikake are shikakes which invite these. It does not matter if that shikake is not attractive and no one notices them or no one acts on them. Excuse me. So there should be a trackable behavioral response. Another aspect of his impact eventually fades. Now, I'll give you an example of, we'll come to that, why the impact fades, like as we go through the examples. Behavioral focused approach. And again, there are atypical situations that you learn like how to. Now, how do these work, right? So generally, there is a physical trigger, an object or something in your environment, which is the cue. It's it creates a psychological trigger and which creates a change in behavior. And so the next chapter he goes into deep into like the theoretical foundations of it, which is not really necessary. Within this context, we can't go deep into that. So he's given so physical trigger. There should be some either feedback or there is a feed forward loop which is generated. And the psychological triggers are, again, you don't have to know it to know how they work or to design them. So this is where he goes into theoretical foundations of. Now, how to create shikake, right? So the best way is discovering. Now that you know what shikake are, the best way to do it is by discovering shikake in the world around you, like the dustbin example we went through. Second is you observe people's behavior. So let's say you want people uh, to litter less. So okay, so you find a location nearby where there is a lot of litter. Now you just observe people's behavior. Is the reason they're littering because there's no dustbin there? Is there reason they're littering because there's already a bunch of litter there, so they find that that is the place where people seem to dump it. So it's good to observe these behaviors and then the elements, right? The elements of the types of shikake and a little bit of these, where you can generate a physical, where to set up a physical trigger to create. Now we'll go through a few case studies. I think we have 3, 4 minutes left. So now this is an example, especially in the Western world, where generally you don't find much litter. in the first world. You find a lot of cigarette butts. So this is one of those, this is called the ballot bin. So what they do is they create dustbins or like trash cans. You can implement this immediately even here uh, without saying like with other things also. I've seen someone use it where you give two options. So people can then kind of vote with their trash because what you're doing is they're going to throw the trash in the waste anyway. So you kind of gamified it. What it does is like it's they have tracked the results. So in lots of locations, 73% is a huge amount, like because they have been working with this issue of cigarette trash in the West for a long time. Again, a question and two answers. Now, can you think of other ways you would use it, something like this, for something other than trash? Like you can feel free to unmute yourself and like one example I'll give you is in a tips jar, right? Like people, you want to induce people to give more tips at a restaurant. You put two options, two tip jars, and you on one you put, let's say, an example like uh, whatever, like you can coffee, tea, or you can put in if it's a let's say a bar or some music venue, you put in the name of like Britney Spears or Beyonce or whatever like people are listening to. So this like you can use the same in different ways. Now, uh, again, like I give you an example of the animal bin, right? The so here you can see the left one is a better designed one because mouth really opens well. Right is an example of a badly designed one, which it kind of gets people's attention, but the next aspect of it, throwing trash or like that doesn't. So there are different variants of it I've seen like all over. Generally, this would work better in children's parks, while something like this would work better in for young adults in the college environment. Now, uh, kids, maybe adults might not really be, it might not drive the behavior that we might want, especially except in children. Now, for designers, right? So, affordances and signifiers, right? So what are affordances and signifiers? See, for example, my door, there is a example of a door. So affordance is the door opens. That is the action that that object is able to take. The signifier is the doorknob, which kind of implies that you have to pull on it, push on it, or the handle on it. So similarly, like when you're designing shikake, so there is something the shikake can do. So trash bin. So trash bin is a normal thing. But what you are doing is you are putting a signifier to indicate and gamifying it using some aspect of it. Next is rewards. There is an inherent reward, right? Like you don't need to like tell people to throw. Like there is an inherent reward when they meet the hoop, right? When the trash goes right in the hoop. There is the thinking of long term. Now, long term is, let's say, you want to create a responsible generation of people who throw the trash in the bin. What you can have is something like have this in their childhood environments, play areas, have something like this in their college areas. So what happens is people will be naturally inclined over the long term. So now once that behavior is input as an adult, they will not even realize and they'll just throw it in the trash. That is what we call as meta behaviors, like where you are generating long-term behaviors in this. And again, if one person does it, everyone will do it. So when you have the bicycles, right? One person, even a few people park or things according to the lines, everyone else will kind of follow that same line. But we have almost just a minute left. I think we'll wrap up. Thank you for your time. Like if you have comments, questions, please uh, um, say so before the call drops off. Again, thank you for joining me.
I
Um,
think the session should have been longer. This was really interesting. Thank you so
yeah,
much, Yash.
yeah. I too.
Thanks, Yash.
Yeah.
Wonderful session. Though it was a short one, I